Hello and welcome to Basiltov, the courage and creativity of ADHD. I'm Jen,
I'm Ellen.
And I'm Annette.
and we are here to speak to you today about something that goes on the internet a lot: excuses or explanations. We're here to talk about ableist and disableist language and how that plays into our perception of whether we're offering an excuse or if we're offering an explanation for our symptoms or behavior. So, I think the best way to do this, since you hear the words ableist, you hear the word ableist thrown out on the internet constantly. Um, and the sort like some people don't really know what to make of it. Some people don't know what ableism is. They might never have heard the word or seen it before, and then all of a sudden somewhere on Facebook or Twitter they come across it and they're confused. Why am I being called an ableist, or why is somebody else being called an ableist? So, Annette, what is the actual definition of ableism?
So, ableism is used to describe a way that society and people tend to favor non disabled people. So, things that would be totally normal for people who aren't disabled, like um, designing a building that has only stairs and no ramp access, and for those who are physically disabled, or in some ways favoring a school system that prefers sitting down, being quiet, writing head down, when there are many people who have learning disabilities, cognitive disorders, ADHD, hyperactivity, and can't necessarily join in that class function at the same level. So that tends to be what ableism is. Disableism is described as a more direct and conscious act of discrimination or abuse against disabled people. So ableism is more of the not thinking about others aspect, while disableism is purposely going out of your way to cause, make discrimination. No, I'm looking for a word. I'm
Oh
not.
yeah, so
Inflammatory statements
if
is
a
what I want
company
to
was
say.
like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, we don't want any people in wheelchairs in here, so we're not going to have a ramp. We're just going to have stairs."
Right.
That's
That's
disableist.
disableism.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully nobody would do
Okay.
that. It's funny though. It's like,
Right.
where do you draw the line though? Like for people with disabilities, who decided, okay, the building code for every building in the US needs to have a ramp if it's this type of building because of people with disabilities, like or like you were saying about public schools, they weren't really set up for kids with learning disabilities or ADHD, but at what point do you say this is something that needs to be addressed, and a system needs to be put in place for this? And at what point are we just supposed to say, sorry, disabled people, you're on your own?
Right.
It's so hard to
Mm.
know.
Yeah, that can be difficult because, coming from my perspective personally, I know what it's like to have ADHD and PTSD. I know what it's like to have, cognitive function issues and emotional disturbances, but I don't know what it's like to live in a wheelchair. I don't know what
Mhm.
it's like to have a physical disability because I've never had one. Um, so
Yeah,
I
same.
mean, unless you're gonna count asthma, which is, I feel like that's kinda lame though. I
Oh.
mean, maybe there's somebody out there with asthma so bad that it's a disability. I've never run into somebody like that personally, but it
Mhm.
it it could be out there. But for me, it's not.
Well, like,
I
So
think
I just don't
actually,
know.
here's an example. I've got sleep apnea, and you are allowed to take your CPAP on an airplane as an extra item. They cannot charge you for it. So there's a little
Oh,
uh
I didn't even know
I
that, and I
know,
have
yeah,
sleep
yeah. You
apnea too.
you wouldn't have known unless you had to lug your CPAP with you everywhere. But it's great. So
I know,
I've never
right?
been hassled for having an extra bag, and um, so
Oh, get a whole
so there's
extra bag.
that was nice of them, to help people with that disability in that little way.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
the only way that I have ever felt like I had something physical, like a disability, when it wasn't a disability, it was when I broke my leg. So
Oh,
then
Oh,
yeah,
man.
being
then I had
pregnant
to, like,
Ugh.
also. Being pregnant, I started to have
uh,
more empathy for people that were not very mobile,
That's true. I think I personally believe that pregnancy should be characterized as a temporary disability
Oh,
because it
yeah.
is.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
if you can't tie your own goddamn shoelaces, it has to be a disability.
I
Like, come
know. I
on.
love those places that have parking for like pregnant women close to the front of the store. Like there's some
Oh,
grocery stores that
yeah.
have that. It's like, thank you. That's cool. Yeah.
I
That is.
never had much of a I had twins and I was huge, but I'm pretty flexible and I was able to be moving around, and then I got hospitalized in my last month and they made me stay in my bed
Oh
and not walk around, and
no.
Oh,
I'm a hyperactive type,
Oh
and I was,
dear. That
oh,
oh,
must have
it
yeah.
been
drove me
torture.
insane. Yeah. So
Yep.
I would get up and I'd start walking around, and the nurses would find me and they'd be like, "You can't be here. You have to go back to your bed." And I'm like, "I'm just taking a walk." And they're like, "But you need to be on bed rest." I'm just like,
Ah,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah, that would
torture.
have been enough to make anyone insane.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so when we hear things like that's ableist online,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like online is where we hear and see a majority of this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, aren't we way more likely to be kind of turds to each other when we don't have to face one another and see the hurt on somebody's face when you've said something? Of course we are.
Mhm.
So,
It's easy
you
to be a
know,
jackass when you're anonymous.
That's right.
it is
Kind of fun
so
too
much
sometimes.
easier.
What?
And also to just not consider that, that other person at all. Like maybe I'm not being malevolent, but maybe I'm also not being considerate. So
Mm-hmm.
like, so when we see this, people calling other people ableist, a lot of times what they're doing is calling out what they're calling ableist language. Now, there is not, I'm not sure if there's a real definition of ableist language, but the term seems to like, I understand what it's for. I understand what it characterizes, but I also sometimes feel like it gets taken, like stretched out of its original context to cover things that, maybe some people just don't want to hear. Like
Mm.
a well-meaning suggestion when, they're like, "Oh, well, maybe you could try this," and instead of being open to it, somebody goes, "That's ableist language," or something like that.
Oh, because you're asking for them to do
Uh,
something that they don't want to do. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
in those circumstances, I'm like, and I start getting uncomfortable with it because I'm like,
Uh,
well, how do you know that that person is, you know, really being ableist? Like, like is this a real ableist thing, or is this just a I don't want to hear your suggestion thing? And this is what we're talking about with excuse versus explanation. So,
yes. Yes.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
with
yeah.
with kids especially, they they'll give you every
Oh,
excuse, and
right.
it's just so hard to get through to them that, yes, you can do this thing I'm asking you to do, and I'll
Yeah.
even help you, but so that's the most obvious example. But you do run into those adults sometimes in the wild that still act like children and won't
Mhm.
take responsibility for themselves.
Right.
Yeah, it does happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it totally does. And I think everybody has been put in that spot before where they're having a problem and, maybe that's all they can see at the time. Maybe that problem's so frustrating that you haven't come up with any real solutions to it. You're just so frustrated. And then somebody else is like, "Why don't you do this thing?" And it makes it sound so easy.
Yeah.
And you haven't even considered that thing. And you're just like, "You know what? Shut the fuck up. How about that?"
Mm-hmm.
But like, and that's what you would really love to say because you've been so frustrated and somebody just easily throws this one thing out at you that makes sense. It makes total fucking sense, but you're irate at the time and you're not listening really.
Yep.
So like, yeah, I think I've been put in that situation once or twice. Um,
Yeah.
maybe a few times over the
And
years on social media.
we've probably also been in the situation where somebody else is telling us, why can't you just do, this? And we're sitting here thinking like,
Yeah.
because I can't, I'm like, I just am not built that way or whatever. And so you just need, it's like you
Right.
need that other person to understand how you're feeling. I mean, I think as humans, that's what we
Mhm.
all want. We all just want to be seen,
Yeah.
for who we are. And so,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
but then,
Yeah, but
sometimes we underestimate ourselves too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that for some of us, especially those of us of a certain age, that we weren't diagnosed as children because ADHD was a boy's
Oh yeah, it
thing.
didn't exist in girls
And
back
Yeah.
then.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, didn't
So
exist.
we didn't find out till later in life, and so we were constantly had a barrage of information from our peers and from our the adults in our lives, and
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
why can't you do this, why can't you do this, and
Yeah.
we spent
Right.
so many years trying to like make excuses, or like it wasn't really an excuse, it was like I don't know, and I got to do this, and but
Yeah.
how
Just trying to
I know
answer
you want me
that.
to do this, I know I should be better at this, but how do I do that, and
Yeah.
why, what is it with me, what is my personal failing, my moral failing, that is making it so I can't do this thing. And then
Yeah.
we get
Right.
diagnosed and we're like, oh, okay, well that's why I can't do that thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes sense
Right.
to us. And then we're so tired from the years of fighting
Mhm.
that when somebody says, why can't you, you just look at them and go, cuz I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think to kind of like even enhance that statement, because I am 100% on board with you here. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, all of us were born in the year 1982.
Woo.
And we were in school. Our school years went from the late 80s to the late
2000.
90s.
Yeah.
Oh, to 2000. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
when Annette and I graduated. So during that period of time, there was this culture shift going on where, in the younger part of those years, girls were still expected to grow into women who were very much homemakey type of people. And then as we aged up into preteen, teenage years, the shift happened where all of a sudden we're being told, no, girls can do anything boys can do. Girls can do anything. You could do anything you want as long as you try hard enough.
Yeah.
So
And go to
we had,
college.
you can do everything you want as long as you try. That was drilled into our heads so hard,
Yeah.
guys. I'm so serious. And then we're also hearing things like, why are you such an airhead? Why are you such a space cadet? What you like, I used to get told
Why don't
that
you
I would
take anything seriously?
Mm.
yeah, you'd forget your ass on the school bus if it wasn't bolted to your body, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So you're getting insulted. Your intellect is being actively insulted by teachers, by parents, by your friends in school, because they're noticing a difference in you and you're struggling to understand it as a person, but you're also being told every day, just do your best, try your hardest, keep trying, never give up, because you can do anything you want.
Anything.
So right, which, and is that reasonable?
No.
No. Is that realistic?
It made a
No,
very
it's
entitled
not.
generation of people, I think, in some ways. We
Yeah.
all want our
In
participation
certain ways,
trophy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
we didn't have the
We tried. Don't we get
participation
something?
trophy.
realization. Yeah. We also didn't have the reality that is the financial crash and people not being able to find jobs. When we were growing up, that still wasn't quite an issue.
Yeah.
Right
Mhm.
as we graduated
Mm-hmm.
That was an
from
issue.
university, that started being an issue. So it's like, you can do
Yeah.
anything. Okay, I went to university, but now there's no jobs,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
so
yeah. So then you had like a bunch of people with bachelor's degrees working at Starbucks
Oh
and
yeah.
people talking about that like it was, shocking. And
and you're
then,
It was back
and you're
then.
yeah,
30 years old. Yeah, you're 30 years old. You should have a house. Well, how can I get a house when I can't make the down payment? And I can't get
Right.
a loan because of, X, Y, and
Because of my
Z, and it's
student loans. And
right.
Oh God.
That are
yeah. 'Cause
take forever to pay back.
Millennials, we were
right.
told so many promises of what our future would be like if we just tried hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just keep trying.
Hmm.
So
Just
in
keep
that
digging. Just keep
Yeah.
digging.
right. So in the spirit of just keep digging or just keep trying, we you know, we just we want so badly to be able to do what it is we want to do or what other people expect us to be able to do, but sometimes we fall short because of many reasons like, impulsivity or cognitive function issues or
Depression.
or
Yeah.
yeah, depression, the inability to pay attention for too long. We can let people down. We can let ourselves down in a number of ways, very unwittingly, unintentionally. So, um, when we start like talking about excuses um, versus explanations, it feels like a sticky situation to some of us at a certain age here.
Hmm.
So, so if you're around our age group, you might feel this sticky, like, well, but what characterizes an excuse or
Hmm.
what characterizes an explanation? So,
Yeah.
we're going to kind of go through and talk about that. Each of us, maybe giving an insight on what they view personally as an excuse versus an explanation. So, Annette, what would you say is an excuse versus an explanation?
Personally, I mean, I don't. I'm not a person who really likes excuses in the first place. That was
Yeah.
beaten out of
I
me
love them.
by, like, almost literally. Um, my grandfather
Ellen's
and
laughing.
yeah, just 'cause she likes them.
Yeah, I do love
No,
them.
my father and my grandfather would not accept an
Hmm.
excuse,
Really?
and so
Like nothing
for
was good enough for
me,
them? No excuse was good enough? Or
no.
hmm.
No, there is no excuse. Like, I was constantly said,
Wow.
there's no excuse for that behavior. There's no excuse for this. There's
Mm.
no excuse
Yeah,
for
you
this.
do hear that a
That's all.
lot. Mhm.
Yeah. And so I I would either hide something and try to make it go away
Yeah.
so that I wouldn't have to explain it, or try to say an excuse. And but I feel in the at base, I think it's an excuse if you just didn't want to do it,
Mm,
and you're using something as, oh, well, this is the reason, but it's not really the reason.
Mhm.
I feel like
mm,
that's an excuse, like blaming your behavior on something else when you
mhm,
know that it actually comes back to you. I feel like that's an excuse.
Mm.
An
Yeah.
explanation to me is like, I did not do this thing because of this, and I didn't mean for that. It's like, I feel like you're still taking responsibility when you're giving an explanation.
Mhm.
I know
yeah.
I made a mistake. I know I did something wrong, but this happened, and this is what happened, and I'm really sorry. I feel like that, that's an explanation, whereas, like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, my phone didn't charge, and I I didn't make it to the meeting on
Oh, if
time,
somebody's
but
lying about what's
yeah.
happening, then that's an
Right.
excuse also. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lie.
Yeah,
No,
that
that's
yeah.
just a lie.
Yeah.
That's just a
Totally.
lie.
Yep.
Yep. A lie and an excuse.
Mhm.
I I guess, like, I'll see my laundry pile going up, and I'll just be like, "Sorry, I'm busy," which I could technically take the 5 minutes to put my clothes away. So I feel like that's an excuse. I'm just like, "Oh, I'm busy.
Mm,
I'm busy."
Mhm.
I
yeah.
feel like that's an excuse, but, like,
Mhm.
you know, an explanation would be more like, I had this thing, and I literally could not. put the laundry away.
Mm-hmm.
Then explaining it
Right.
would be an explanation and not an excuse.
What would you say about
Right.
what would you say about somebody who just keeps forgetting to do it? Would you say that's an excuse or an explanation? If it's because that legit will happen to me sometimes. It's like, all right, put your laundry away, put it right in the hallway so you remember to do it. But it's like I'll just walk right by it, forget.
Oh, yo, dude. Yesterday, I had a gig in Tokyo.
Nice.
And I had 2 outfits that I had to wear for this gig.
Ooh.
And I had my long boots. I put them in my entryway.
Yeah.
Like right where my shoes are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't forget them. And it was rainy. And I went and I grabbed my umbrella and all my bags, but I didn't grab my shoes.
What happened?
And I was driving almost to my destination, and suddenly in my mind I was like, I don't remember picking up that box.
Oh no.
I didn't pick up that box, did I? And then when I got out of my car and I looked, it was gone.
Oh fuck.
And I was like, oh. So luckily my daughter didn't have to go to school, so she brought my boots down to me on the train.
God.
And I gave her a good sizable chunk of money.
Oh, nice. That was nice of you. But like that was totally
awesome.
your ADHD. Just like you did something out of order. You got an umbrella and it probably just tricked your brain and it's like, all right, time to go now. You know, like for me, I would say that's your ADHD. That's not, you're not at fault. Nobody would fault you for that, basically. You know, even though you probably fault yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But
I took responsibility,
right,
and I was either going to go home.
That's what it boils down to. It doesn't really matter if you're trying to use it as an excuse or an explanation. Just you got to take personal responsibility for what you need to be responsible for. Yeah.
So Jen, would you say that it's intent?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse versus explanation. Would that be your intention? Like, what is your intent?
I think that it does a lot of times boil down to intent. I would agree with you there totally. Because you like, and I also think that certain situations could go one way or the other. Like, so with the boots example, it's ADHD. She forgot the boots. It wasn't intentional, so it's an explanation at that point. But she also could have been like, hey, well, why don't we just change the entire thing? Because, my ADHD, I forgot my boots and now we just have to do it without it because I don't want to go back. Like I don't want to think of another way to solve the problem. So that at that point, I think it might start hedging into excuse territory if you just don't want to go the extra mile to go back and get what you need or to fix the problem, and then you're just gonna be like, well, it's my ADHD.
Yeah, if you're just giving up. If she was just gonna be like, well, I can't do it today, so I'm just not going to.
Now, it would be one thing if she had gotten there and the show was starting in 5 minutes and, she didn't have the boots. And then it's like, well, what are you going to do? Right.
Yeah.
Like there is literally nothing that's going to save the situation. You're absolutely fucked. But
if let's say if a manager or someone got upset, it's like, God, I can see both sides. Again, I would say like, it's ADHD. It's an accident. She didn't mean to, but then if there's a pattern like this, which a lot of us have these patterns, that's a place where a boss could be like, well, I keep seeing this happen and we can't have this anymore. You're going to have to fix this. But it's like, God, that's just the way I am. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
So
I made a list of, I make a list of things that I have to bring and I still forget things.
Yeah, exactly.
Every time. But I take responsibility for it and I figure it out and I do what I need to do. And I don't use ADHD as a crutch.
Right. Yeah. I'm not saying this is some thing that keeps happening to you or anything. Yeah.
No.
But I think that some people do use things as a crutch.
Yeah.
And
I mean, where this comes up is in relationships. You're in a partnership and your partner tells you, hey, I've noticed that you keep forgetting to do this thing that you said you were going to do, and that's affecting me because blah, blah, blah. as their partner, yeah, you do need to be aware and think about, okay,
Mm-hmm.
how can I fix this? How can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And of course, we all make mistakes, but yeah, that's where we need to take a little accountability for ourselves is when it's affecting other
Right.
people.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm
Yeah.
gonna get in a little bit of trouble here
Uh-oh.
because I am from the older, I am a millennial, and I do think that if you are using it to make people feel sorry for you,
Hmm. Yeah.
that's where I think that excuses really, g- you know,
I think
become
that's just flat out
troublesome.
manipulation.
That
I view that as flat out manipulation. Like, if you're using a disability to make people feel sorry for you and to put them in a piteous kind of mood towards you, I really just don't like that. But also I grew up and then was attached to later, narcissists who of various malignancies that um that and these people know how to manipulate and turn a situation. And so for me, it might be a little bit of my CPTSD coming up and saying, I don't want to accept this because it's manipulation. um but at the same time, I think everybody needs to be reasonable and listen to each other. So like that boss that gets mad at somebody for accidentally forgetting something, and they're still angry even though they're like, oh, let me fix the
Hmm.
situation here, I can just do this in a few minutes, here you go, here it is, all better now. Even if it only wasted 5 minutes of the day, if that person's still irate and being like, you're a terrible employee because you did this one thing and caused us, a whole 5 extra minutes
Mm-hmm.
of of time during the day, then that's where ableism and disableism start to come in.
Yes.
And that's
That
where
it can get
that's
toxic
where
then too if there's resentment.
yeah,
Well,
that's where it's
And that's where
toxic.
I feel like maybe you're not in the right job for you if your boss isn't going to be understanding, or
Yeah.
maybe you're not in the right relationship for you if your partner's not going to be understanding. I was in a marriage for 16
Mhm.
years and he never understood my brain ever. He could never understand why I would always be forgetful or, well, list every
Mhm.
trait. Yeah. He could
Yeah.
never understand that. He's so different and neurotypical in a lot of ways that it blew his mind how I would forget some things. And so now it feels really good to be in a relationship where I feel understood and seen, and like you know they they realize that is just kind of how I am, and I don't mean to forget
Yeah.
things, but it happens a lot. So
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, the right
Yeah.
Well, and what you
situation
were
is so important.
talking about with the job and them being having ableism towards you, that's actually called saneism, and
Hmm.
that's
Oh, saneness.
discrimination based on mental health conditions and cognitive
Oh.
disabilities. So
Oh,
um yeah,
Oh, look
there's
at
actually a
that.
classification for
Saneism.
that.
wow.
Another word to go nuts on Twitter. Look at that. Twitter's going to explode now with that's saneism.
Saneism.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds so much like Satanism that
Yeah,
we could all like claim to be devil worshippers at this point.
we're
Satanism.
studying sanism. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
This
We're in
is
a cult.
best.
It's the sanest cult.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but
But yeah, I've
anyway,
definitely been in jobs like
I'll
that before where I felt like this person will never understand how I think because they're so different than
yeah.
me, and so if I make a mistake, I'm not going
Oh
to get a
yeah.
lot of empathy.
Well, and I
Yeah.
feel that people who can't understand will listen to your explanation and call it an excuse.
Yeah, there is that, because just as you can turn a valid explanation into an excuse with the mere use of intent, you can also, with the use of intent, turn an explanation into an excuse. Yay, look at that. If you're the listener, you can also kind of fudge this situation a little bit.
But isn't that a matter of perspective? Like
Hmm.
Mm,
whether it's an excuse or a explanation, it kind of depends on your personal perception, because like my
Mm.
kids might think that when they're telling me they didn't do their homework and they're giving me what I see as an excuse, they might feel that it's an explanation, and I just
Mm.
am not taking it as that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that they're like the rules of engagement on explanations versus excuses. I feel like, there is definitely a division between the two, an explanation or an excuse, and it can be very much, viewed as one or the other depending on, like we've said before, the intent of the situation. But some people don't understand the definition of excuses versus a explanation. And either that, or they've grown up hearing that's an excuse, that's an excuse, when really it might have been a valid explanation for
So
something. So
what's a good explanation, like what's a good example that you can give, like an explanation versus an excuse?
like, let's say, somebody grows up and they, have, oh, this is a good one. When I was growing up, I have a rare skin disorder, and when I was growing up, I often had to walk very slowly. So I guess I do know what it's like to have a physical disability.
Oh.
Anyway, but I had to walk very very slowly sometimes, especially in like, what would have been, I was probably like 15 and younger when this condition was at its absolute worst. But
Puberty.
um huh
Puberty.
well, no, I was born with it.
Mm.
So I had
No,
to.
that's when it was the worst. It was during puberty, is what I'm saying.
No, it was worse. It was worse the younger I was in life. As I got
Oh.
older, I just, like, you can age out of this thing. Like, you can it gets better as you get older sometimes. And with me, that's what's happened. So basically, I would have my skin, the skin on my feet couldn't hold the weight of my body, and it would just split right open,
Whoa.
and I would start bleeding randomly. So every time I took a step, I could have my skin splitting on my feet, and it would just open and bleed.
Oh, that's not
Um,
fun.
I had my feet bandaged. Yeah, no, it wasn't fun. I had my feet bandaged a lot. I had kids in swim team making fun of me and telling me that I had fungus on my feet when it was really a genetic condition,
Oh.
um, a genetic mutation,
Ooh,
actually.
cool.
And yeah, I know. Technically, I'm a mutant, but I have no superpowers
That you know
whatsoever.
of.
Damn it. Uh,
That you
short
know
end of
of.
the mutant
Unless
stick.
ADHD is
So
the superpower.
yeah, I think it is. But I used to have to hobble to and from classes, and when I started getting into middle school and high school, they expect you to be on time for your classes. For, it goes from you being in one class to you being in like three classes
Yeah.
or five classes or seven. So passing time could be kind of a nightmare because I would have to limp slowly from class to class in a crowded hallway, and sometimes I couldn't make it on time. Not because I didn't want to make it on time, not because I was socializing too much, but because that particular day, even if I avoided every friend I had, even if I avoided Annette in the
Mm.
hallway,
Impossible.
I
Which was hard.
would, which was hard. But if I if I
Mm.
managed to do that, I wouldn't have gotten there on time. And there were some, my teachers usually understood because they could see me limping around. They knew something was wrong. And the rest of the time, I was quite dependable. So, me saying, I'm sorry, I made it to class 5 minutes late because I couldn't physically move down the hallway that fast.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, most of the time I got listened to. Now, if I was fucking around in the hallway and I was hanging out with Annette and we were all chilling and making jokes or drawing weird stuff in our notebooks when we weren't supposed to, and then I go rushing off to class and,
Because
oh,
that
look,
never
I'm five
happened,
minutes late.
ladies and gentlemen. That never
Oh, no,
happened.
never. Perfect
Never
angels. Mm-hmm.
happened. No, of
Yeah. No,
course.
that totally makes
But
sense.
at the same time, at the same time, like when I was late genuinely because I was being like a teenager with ADHD, and also because I wasn't paying as much attention as I absolutely could have to the time. I wouldn't use that excuse. I'd just be like, they'd be like, "Why are you late?" And I'd be like, "I'm sorry, I was talking to my friends." And like, I would be super honest about it. And then I'd get, docked points or whatever for being late or however they were doing. I can't remember how they did
Yeah,
it
me
anymore,
neither.
but I could have been like, "Oh, it was my condition again. I couldn't move down the hallway as fast as usual." But then that would have been an excuse. It would have been
Mm.
me using a very valid disability as a shield to protect me against consequences that I rightfully earned.
Mm.
So, yeah. So,
There you go.
that's my difference between an excuse and an explanation. Yay.
Yeah.
See, but I feel like an excuse is just a lie then.
Mm.
An excuse could be a lie. I think an excuse could be a lie. Um,
Yeah.
or maybe they're just
It might be, or it
yeah.
might be
I
the
feel
truth, but there's,
A white lie.
yeah.
oh, you know what I just thought of? Maybe the people, how there are those people that are always like, that's an excuse. I don't take excuses. And it doesn't matter what you tell
Mm-hmm.
them, they will
Mm-hmm.
always tell you it's an excuse. Well, maybe those people simply don't believe that you actually had a problem. Maybe they think you're lying to them all the time, and that's why they're saying it's an
Yeah,
excuse.
that could be. Trust
I
issues.
think so. My
Yeah.
grandpa and my dad were kind of like that.
Yeah.
So they would just assume you're lying all the time.
Yeah, or just
Ugh.
like, yeah, I was making something up to cover for what I didn't do. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of more of a reflection on them, isn't it?
Well,
Oh,
you're not really thinking
sorry,
that
Annette's
way.
dad.
He knows.
Damn. Well, I still didn't mean to call him out.
Well, that you learn by those who taught you, right? So we shouldn't be talking to
Yes.
my grandpa who's dead.
Hmm.
Uh-oh.
Oops.
The source is gone.
Yes.
So, Ellen, what do you feel like is an excuse
I know, I've been thinking
versus
about this. I
explanation?
think that it's
It's
Yeah.
just it
hard.
is because it's so you can't just make broad guidelines like if a person acts this way it's an excuse, if it's this way it's an explanation. It's like it's so entirely individualistic and situational, and just like let's say um on any given day if I'm running late to work, maybe there's half excuses and half explanations for why I'm late. Maybe I'm hungover. That's my fault. I'm the one that drank. And so but maybe I accidentally missed my alarm or forgot to set the alarm. Well, if I forgot to set the alarm, was that my ADHD? Is that an explanation or is that an excuse? And somebody could tell me, no, you should have remembered to set your alarm, or you should have had a system in place to make sure you always have an alarm, and then maybe I did everything right that morning, but I forgot the one thing I needed and had to go back. The fact that I forgot, that's ADHD. Excuse or explanation? All these little micro transactions or whatever, these little tasks you're doing and little interactions with your life, they all just kind of add up and then create create life.
A
A
Mhm.
clusterfuck.
clusterfuck. I don't think
Yes.
you just have to
Yeah.
look for patterns in your life and okay, I mean, like, here's a classic example of, like, two partners, one of them is telling the other one, you're not doing enough around the house, maybe that person has legit reasons why they have not been helping around the house. Maybe they do have a lot of physical pain, disability, or maybe, I don't know. It's like, it's just so individualistic. But someone from the outside could say, oh, well, yeah, every partnership that should be 50-50 work split. And so obviously that person needs to pitch in more. And like, how do you
Mm.
know where to draw the line? At what point should a partner tell the other one, um, I think you're capable of doing more? And so, or, when do you tell your partner, I feel like I'm doing too much and I physically am not able to, you know, at risk of them telling you, well, that's an excuse, you know. We're
Mhm.
just
There's something you
hmm.
said, though. Something you said, "I feel like you're capable of doing
Yeah.
more." That one sentence just, like, triggered me for a second because I was like, "Oh,
Uh-oh,
fuck."
in a good way
Like,
or bad way?
I the I g it's just kind of like one of those, like, light bulby kind of
Mm.
weird moments or maybe a flash of the past or I don't know. It
Yeah.
was just, like, I just kind of got this moment where I was like, "But if we say, I think you're capable of more, isn't that hedging
Ooh, is that
on
ableism? I
ableist
know, it
language?"
might be. It might be.
Because
Yeah.
like, if you're dealing with somebody who has a disability and you're saying that to them, like, "I feel like you're capable of more," but they don't know how to be
Yeah,
capable of
yeah.
more, isn't that
To them, that
so
probably feels really
may
ableist if we're
yeah,
telling them, "No, I know you can do better," and
it
they're
could.
thinking, "No, I can't."
Ex- you have to actually think that ADHD is a cognitive and mental disorder to be able to say that that's ableist.
Hmm.
That's
And what
true.
I mean by that is that
Yeah.
there are still a lot of people who don't believe that that is a real diagnosis, that it's
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
real cognitive problem. And so
Yeah.
what they're looking at it as is they're not looking at it as being ableist. They're looking at it as like that's not actually an issue.
Hmm. Yeah.
See,
Mm.
the thing with mental roadblocks and mental challenges is that when you have a physical handicap, everybody can see that.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
visually obvious.
Yeah.
But when you have it in your head, nobody else can see it. They don't if that's not their reality, they don't think that that's a real thing.
Right. Yes, I mean, for some people, the most incredibly brave thing they can do is leave their house and go see other people, you know, because their social anxiety is
Yeah.
so bad, you know, and so,
Yeah.
uh, but, you know, we would I don't know. Yeah, everyone's just on a spectrum. We're all of our different abilities. So, it's
Mhm.
so tough.
That's true. That's true,
Yeah, and
and
I
some of
feel
this stuff
like
gets just lost in translation,
Mhm.
like, the translation of one mind to
Yeah,
another.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I feel like this younger generation now coming up under us is they have so many uh vocabulary, they have so much vocabulary and so many lines, and they want everything to be so black and white. But,
Mhm.
there are all shades of gray in between black and white.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
it's like I do find myself getting caught up in even not just with the mental health issue, but like with gender identity, with things like that, which I'm very open-minded about things, but there are some things that I just don't get, and there I don't understand the all or nothing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then
Like, if
yeah.
you don't believe this, then you're on that side. And it's like I'm
Mm.
seeing that in American
Oh,
politics. I'm
yeah.
seeing it
Yeah.
worldwide, and it's like everybody's moving to their corners, and I'm just like,
It's black and white
Yeah,
thinking.
and that's just not how
yeah,
that's
and
Yeah.
not
it's like, but
reality.
they're yeah,
No,
so I
black and
Yeah,
white is
life
not
is a
reality.
paradox, and you gotta
It's
embrace that paradox. There's gonna be good and bad all the
so
time.
so
now there
something could
are
be a question and it could
Mhm.
be an explanation and an
Mhm.
excuse all at the same
Yeah.
time.
yeah, true. Yeah. I mean, I think that, if we're talking about generations coming up under us, there's going to be a little bit of lost in translation there too, because they weren't around when we had, certain struggles. And, it's tempting for older generations to think, well, I didn't have all these tools and I didn't have all this stuff when I was going through it. So neither should you, or you have it so easy because you didn't have to deal with this. But the thing is, those generations also have other pieces of undesirable things to deal
Yeah.
with. Like, it's just gonna be different. And
Yeah.
so what kills me about the black and white thinking of like, oh, millennials are also entitled and Gen Z is just a bunch of like whiny complaining brats or whatever it is. Like, you can't, like, I hear crap like that and I just laugh at it because it's like I can't even take it seriously. It's just such a lazy thought
Mm-hmm.
that that I can't even take it seriously. So like when I hear people doing black and white thinking, I'm hearing one that maybe you have a cognitive disability that dictates that you have black and white thinking and that's something that you actively struggle with, or two, you are not using the full potential of your brain to think the situation through because you're comfortable saying one thing but you're not comfortable thinking out the rest of it.
Mm.
So like I think a lot of times people's different discomforts can play into whether or not they're going to say something is ableist or not ableist, disableist or not disableist, an excuse or an
Mm-hmm.
explanation. So, depending on what they're comfortable with, depending on how it affects them personally. So, that manager that's just being a dickhole and not taking into account your legitimate disability, well, maybe that manager is up for a promotion or raise and is being actively monitored at the time. And it makes them look bad that you've come into work 10 minutes late. It makes them look like they can't manage a staff.
Yeah, you
So like
always
there's
gotta
all
look at
kinds
other
of
people's
things.
perspectives.
Right. Yeah. So there's like all kinds of different perspective shifts. And I'm not saying that it's the right thing to do to tell somebody that, their behavior is unacceptable simply because it doesn't suit you in that moment. Like, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying that it's a tempting thought. And a lot of people don't get past the temptation of the tempting
Yeah.
thought. So it is what it is, I guess, on some levels. But sometimes you get to have these cool conversations where you take a step back and say, hey, now wait, I know that you think that this is an excuse, but let me tell you my reality.
Yeah.
This is really what happened to me. This happened. I can prove it to you. Here's my phone. Here's a picture. Here's this. Here's my text conversation with my doctor. Whatever it might be. If you have a legitimate issue, you're probably going to have some kind of way that you can show that. And I always just like to level with people and say, I know that this is undesirable. I know that you don't like what I've done here. I will work as hard as I can to fix the problem. And, maybe I need an accommodation for my disability in a certain
Mm-hmm.
regard. So, and I think that that's really the beauty of unmasking a disability, because with
Yes.
ADHD, autism, and many other mental health conditions, it is very tempting to mask it. It's very tempting to try to blend into society and pretend like that disability doesn't exist for a moment, even though it does. And um, it's really tempting to just, you know, not be the person who draws attention.
Mm.
But sometimes it's also not to our benefit to do that. Like, how is your boss going to know that you need an accommodation if you don't ask for one? How is your boss going to know that you're struggling with a mental health issue if you don't tell them that? And obviously, there are going to be bosses that are untrustworthy as fuck, and you can't tell
Oh
them these
yeah.
things.
And we
so, so there's going to be that
have we
too.
already done an
But
episode on
like,
unmasking or not yet? I feel like we
I
need
don't
to. That's a
know.
whole
I
nother
don't
topic, what it's like to unmask.
That
I
is a
don't think
really
we
good
Yeah.
have.
question. You know what? Maybe we should do that because we've mentioned it several times, I think, before. Maybe just a couple times. I don't know, but I know we've talked about
Yeah,
it a lot.
because that's also kind of
Um,
a touchy subject too,
so
Some people might think, "Oh,
yeah.
unmasking, I'm just gonna be myself and be late for everything because that's naturally how I am. I don't care who it offends." It's like, "No,
Oh,
no,
ooh,
that's not what unmasking is
no,
about."
that's not what
It's not a
unmasking is at
ticket to just
all.
do whatever the hell you want. Yeah, we
No,
live in a society. You got to think about other
unmasking.
people here too.
Right. Yeah. You're not the only
Yeah.
one in the space. Right. You have to share this whole earth. But no, I think that unmasking is something that you do when you know about a problem, you know that it's a pervasive problem to your life, and you are actively working on fixing it or trying to make it better or trying to make the effects lesser in some way. I think that unmasking is taking accountability for
Hmm.
all of that and putting that burden on your own shoulders, like, I am actively working on this thing. Because then, if you say that out loud, you are going to have to put your money where your mouth is. You're going to have to actually, go through the motions of becoming better in some way
Hmm.
or making those effects less in some way. Um, and I know that it's tempting to think, well, society should change and society should, do these things. Maybe we shouldn't have hard and fast work start times. Maybe we should all just clock in and clock out and do a mandatory 8 hours whenever it suits us.
That doesn't
I
work.
Maybe,
mean, the great thing is, though, there are
maybe,
jobs like that,
but
like the
Yeah,
last
some
job that I had, as a baker, the restaurant I was at, they didn't care what time I came in, so that was brilliant for me. As long as I got the work done, I could come in whenever I wanted. Like, hell yeah.
I I think you could I think that works when you don't have other people who are dependent on what you're doing.
Yeah, very true. I mean, there were definitely situations where I knew I had to get in earlier on a certain day, but it was just nice to not have a super strict schedule like in a lot of places to have, where if you're 5 minutes late, they
mhm.
side eye you. It's like, here, it just didn't matter. So I would just plan my day accordingly.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that that works really nicely when you're doing piecework. Like in a bakery, you're doing
Yeah.
piecework. It's like one cake, two cakes, three cakes.
Yeah.
There we go. My day is done. I only had three cakes, but maybe the next day you'll have seven cakes, and then you have to
Right.
get in there early. But you
Exactly.
know that.
So,
So, and they all have to be done at the same
hmm,
time. Like the delivery date is not any farther away, but you still have more work to do. So, but in places where that wouldn't work, or places like, I used to work in
right.
call
You
centers.
can't just walk
There's
in
no
whenever
way
you
on
want.
this
Yeah.
earth. No, because you have to have people there to cover the customer service for those times. Like if somebody makes it in 15 minutes late, that could actually impact everybody
Oh, right.
else's flow.
Exactly. So
So
that's why
like,
I tend to, I try to
yeah.
stay away from those types of jobs, because I just know that I don't want to have that responsibility of other people depending on me, and me potentially
Mhm.
fucking up things for everyone else if I mess up. So
Yeah.
that's just one thing I've learned about myself over the years. So I think that's, when you're talking about explanations versus excuses, I feel like explanations are like things that you can, uh, it's it's having that attitude of like, I have agency over my life, and I can make changes to this situation, to solve it if there's a problem. And I forgot what I was saying. But just basically, like,
Yes.
you can, like, if you're in a situation where you're always late at work, like, figure it out. Why are you always late? Are there legitimate reasons out of your control that are causing this? Or is there something you can do to fix this? Or do you just need to get a different job? There's so many different solutions here, you know?
And this,
Mhm.
ladies and gentlemen, is why I am the boss.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep. Because then you can work your own schedule
Yeah.
the
So
way you
just
want
get
it.
to know yourself
In
and get
fact,
to know what you want and what you need out of a partnership, out of a job, out of life. We all need different things.
I should mention at this point that if you want to change the world, having ADHD is one of the most perfect places that you can start. Because, and no, I'm totally serious. Because I watched a TED Talk, so I'm an expert now on this topic, by the way. Um, because I watched because they,
Annette can't handle it.
oh,
Oh
I've killed
no.
Annette. No. I've watched a TED
So
Talk.
stupid.
It is
What
so
was it
stupid.
on?
I'm the queen of saying stupid things, though. So it was about like it was about having ADHD out in the business
Ooh.
world. And I was what Yeah, it was actually a
Oh, we
really
should put a link to
fascinating
it in
TED
the
Talk, and it was
description.
done by somebody,
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
if I can find it.
if
Yeah,
we can
sure.
find
I
it, folks.
I think I saw it, the same one that you saw. So I
Where
think
he was
I
like, yeah, he was the CEO of a small business, and he had worked, really hard to get his business off the ground, and it was successful, and he was doing really well. And he started wondering what it was about himself that was you made him capable of doing that, whereas some other people, they just don't seem to have it in them. Or maybe it's just, they don't have what it takes to create a business that sticks. Now, millions of businesses get registered every single year, but not very many of those. Like, I think it's only like
Oh, I think it's like
10% of
2%
businesses
last more than a
last.
year or something like that. It's so low.
Yeah, like more than it's like, I think it's like 10% the first year and
Yeah, maybe
2%
that's
2
it.
years
That
out
sounds
or
right.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't
it's
remember,
low.
but about the statistics, but it's really, really low how many businesses survive after the first or second year. And it's really rare to get to year 5. And it's even more rare to get to 10 years. And the people who lead these businesses obviously they have something different that the majority of society do not
Hmm.
possess. And it turns out that there are quite a lot of CEOs and business leaders of successful businesses that have ADHD.
Ah, that's the secret
So
spice,
what he
huh?
was the secret spice could be the thing that you were told was a disability in the first place, but
Mm.
maybe it's actually not.
can I
Maybe it
speak
works
to
to your
this?
advantage.
Can I speak
Yes.
to this? Because
Oh
I
yeah.
am a business owner. I own 3 businesses. They are all successful. And really, what I think it comes down to is that we have a way of just overcoming adversity because we have to do it in our own mind all the time. And so,
You're used to
like,
it.
even with, yeah, even with this podcast, it's like we started with nothing. We don't really advertise much, and it's growing. And the reason, you just keep with it. We have
Hmm.
this like tenacity, like to just like, you know,
Mhm.
perseverance because our own
Yeah.
brain gets in the way and we're like, okay, but I know that if I do this enough, then things will start happening. I have to, and seeing the micro changes.
Yeah.
And so like I think just because
And yeah.
we have to deal with this our brain so much, we just kind of
Mhm.
go, well, okay, but so that's the same thing as a business. I kind of equate my brain issues like the same way as I look at my
Mhm.
business in a lot of ways. Go
That's a
ahead.
good way of
Yeah.
looking at it. Because, like, as somebody who has combined type ADHD, and I imagine this would apply to like literally all of us anyway, is that like I am used to looking at something that I've done and go, that wasn't ideal. How can I fix that? Or that, how can I make this even better the second
Hmm.
time around? Hey, what's the shortcoming here? How could I bolster that?
What's the
Like,
shortcut?
Yeah.
what's the shortcut? How can I get there
Yeah.
quicker? How can I do what I need to do? So like I'm used to doing that just, to my own personality and my
Yeah.
my own capability every single day. So, as a business leader, I would probably be more creative with problem solving than somebody who's not used to doing that every single day just to get through
Hmm.
life.
Yeah. And we also thrive in crisis.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you really want to change the world, start your own business, be successful at it, and then make your own goddamn
Yeah.
rules. Like seriously, if
Yeah.
if we
Do what works for
all
you.
just go out there, work hard, become successful,
Hmm.
make our own rules, and then at that point we're all changing the world,
But
but we're taking it upon
honestly, though,
ourselves,
it's
like
never been easier to start your own business, and the gig economy is still thriving. And so, like, if you're sick of your corporate job and you just have been wanting to do your own thing, man, I say go for it. Don't quit your job yet. Start it in your spare time
mhm.
and then work up to it. But
Actually, this is actually a trend in jobs right now, is to start your own business and become a consultant or a contractor or freelancer instead of actually working for a company and making somebody else
Cut out the
rich,
middleman.
because these, the billionaire rich assholes of the world are making the rest of us fucking sick. Like, we are sick of
Yeah.
their shit. And at this point, people are leaving their jobs and saying, you know what? It's not worth it to make somebody else a billionaire when I could be much more successful out on my own doing the same thing I do every single day from an office. So I think it's kind of beautiful, because there's been this like fucking let them eat cake kind of attitude among the one percenters out in the world, like, oh, who cares, let them fight to the death over the last slice of bread, over the last roll of toilet paper. They don't give a shit as long as they have their billions of dollars. So, change the world, make up your own business, be successful, and give them
Yeah,
less
maybe
billions.
don't eat
Yay.
the rich, but maybe take a bite. Yeah.
Yeah, take a little bite. No, just eat them.
It was
Just eat them.
sickening to
No.
me watching Howard Schultz testified in front of all the Starbucks workers saying, "Yes, I'm a billionaire. I earned my billions." It's like, oh, really? Really? You personally worked all those hours and served all those cups of coffee? Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No. I hate to break it to Howard Schultz, but there is literally not a single person on this planet who is deserving
No.
of billions of
I
dollars.
mean, unless you
You
invented
like
something that
CEOs.
cured cancer for everyone, or you literally like did something that changed the face of humanity, I don't think anyone deserves billions.
I don't even think those people deserve to live outlandishly lavish
Yeah, good
lives while
point.
other
Yeah,
people are
nobody needs that
starving in
much
the
money.
streets. I don't think. No, no, no. No. If you're the kind of person who thinks that you deserve like billions and billions of dollars for doing like almost nothing during the day, then no, I'm sorry. You've got a narcissism
We just had to go
problem
on
at
a
that
side
point.
rant here
Um,
about the state of the world.
yeah.
Are we going to
Anyway,
climb off our
Yeah,
soapbox,
we're done.
ladies?
what soapbox? I'm this
No.
tall always. Um,
It's true. Oh,
God damn it. Um,
but yeah,
all right. So yeah, I'm getting off my
but yeah.
soapbox now. So no more
So
soapbox.
excuses and explanations. It sounds like the thing that we want to try to do is not make excuses for ourselves, but take those explanations and
Yeah.
like, what can we learn from them to make changes in our lives? Because we do have control over our lives. We all do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a certain amount of
Yeah.
agency and control. And obviously, this is going out to ADHD people. There might be people out there who don't have a whole lot of agency over their lives, because of either legal reasons or, further disabilities. And we are not suggesting that somebody who's literally, confined to a bed all day go out and change the world and take to the
Oh yeah,
streets.
they
Like,
shouldn't
that's
feel bad that they're
absurd.
not doing the dishes,
So
you know.
yeah. I
Yeah.
yeah, so so this all has to be like, all the context in
Exactly.
the world has got to be thrown at this
All the
stuff.
context.
But generally, if you have a lot of other, like, if you're able to do most things and it's just that ADHD
Yeah.
is your gotcha, then yeah, you have a lot more control over the situation than you
Mhm.
might think you do. And it's a matter of being a creative problem solver so that
And
you
I
can,
think you have to
you
approach
know,
it also.
get out
You have
there
to
and
approach it from a
fix it.
place of self love, too. You know, a lot of us growing up, we were given these
Yeah.
negative messages from authority figures that told us how we should be. And so it's like, I think it's tempting to
Yeah.
kind of want to rebel against that and be like, no, I'm just going to do whatever I want, you know? But like, no,
Yeah.
I deserve to have a clean house. Okay. You know, that's what I try to tell myself so that I
Mhm.
can motivate myself to clean my house. I deserve a clean house. It's like literally something I've said to myself before.
Yeah.
Because if left to my own devices, if it's literally just me, it will get pretty messy before it gets better.
Mhm.
So, but you know, I want
Yeah.
to have higher standards for myself. And so like I was saying earlier, I feel like it's all for all of us, it's just really important to get to know yourself, get to know what you need, and then fix it from there. Like for me, I realized I can't live by myself because I will let it get so bad that you know it's so I got a roommate, and that right there was that external motivation to help me keep things cleaner. And it really has helped. It's helped tremendously, actually. So I didn't have to just fight myself to do better and clean more. It was like I solved the problem by creating external motivation right there. So yeah. Thank you.
That's
Good.
good. That's a really creative way to solve that
Yeah.
problem. And, sometimes thinking about solutions that seem like, well, why
Yeah.
would I do
And
that?
I will say it is
Consider them
so
anyway.
hard to get to that headspace when you're depressed too. When you're in a place of depression, especially, yeah, you're just like,
Oh, yeah.
fuck it. I don't care. I don't care if I live this way. This is just the way I am. Nothing's gonna change.
Yeah.
It is so easy to get stuck in that. And I'm telling you, you do not have to stay in that place. You deserve better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Everybody deserves better than to, constantly feel victimized and constantly feel on
Yeah.
the bottom rung and
To your own
constantly feel
brain and
exhausted.
from other people.
Everybody deserves better than that.
You know, like we do it to
Yeah, I know,
ourselves.
right? Um, yeah. So at the end of the day, I think that when we're hearing people talking about their experiences, if we're jumping to a conclusion like that's just an excuse, maybe we should hit the pause button there and say, wait a minute, though, could that be an explanation of that person's day? Could that be could they have had a valid reason why
Yeah, it's
something
good to
went
have
wrong in their
grace.
life?
Grace and
Maybe
empathy
they
for other
could.
people. You never
Yeah.
know.
Do
No,
we
we don't
know
know. We don't know
everything?
shit about other
No.
people. Only what
No.
they tell
I feel
us.
like I know very little. um but yeah, so hit the pause button, digest
Mm-hmm.
what you're hearing, and ask yourself, is it possible that this is a genuine reason for them and not an excuse? And also, people who are, the ones running 10 minutes late in traffic, if it's so tempting to just, be like, oh, there was traffic. I couldn't possibly have gotten here on time.
Yeah, there's nothing I could have done.
But is that real? Yeah, absolutely nothing. I couldn't possibly
Yeah.
have left 10 minutes earlier. I couldn't possibly. And there are some times when, yeah, sure, there's like a huge crash and it blocks traffic out for an hour. There's no way you're going to get that. You're not going to get the better of that situation no matter what you do. You're not a mind reader. You're not like some kind of psychic. So, you know, don't expect to always have the upper hand. But in most situations, I think, being 5 or 10 minutes late might just boil down to we need to,
Know
work on a
ourselves enough to
skill
know that
or
we will
something
be
like
5 or 10 minutes late on most days, and so make changes from there.
right.
Yeah, get a
Get a
workaround.
workaround. And maybe the first time, like if I've got ADHD and it's a new job, maybe the first time I'll be a little bit late or something because I didn't know what it was going to be like to get there really, especially if the interview was on
Mm-hmm.
Zoom. uh,
Oh, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong.
like so
Yes.
extenuating circumstances, but take that moment to say, am I offering an excuse because I didn't want to do what it took
Yeah.
to really do it right? Or am I really telling a story of how something went exceptionally wrong
Mm-hmm.
today? Like, is this, or am I talking about a legitimate thing that I need an accommodation for through my
Yeah.
work because I have this issue? So, one way or another, it needs to get sorted out, but it has to be sorted out with truth and transparency and the kind of grace that Ellen likes to give herself. I'm not capable of it yet. I'm still
Man,
learning.
it's I
So
know we don't need any new topics, but it's hard to ask for accommodations though sometimes, it's hard to do that at work. You don't want to reveal your hand too much, but
yeah,
it's nice to have them too.
right. Maybe that's
Yeah,
also
that
a
kind of goes
topic
with
for another
unmasking. If you're gonna
podcast later.
unmask, you better ask for accommodations too,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, seriously. So, to wrap it all up, talk of ableism and disableism and now saneism is none of this is going to be an easy chat, especially not on social media. I don't think anyone should talk about this crap over social media because it's, a tiny little sound bite and you can't possibly explain your whole life in a tiny little sound bite. But if you absolutely must get into that situation, just know that there's going to be times when you're dealing with somebody who's not going to see your side no matter what you say. Um, and also maybe I think maybe we could all just take that extra moment to listen and pause and be like, am I being unreasonable? Is this is this the hill I want to die on today? Should I pick my battles? Should I consider another
Mm-hmm.
person's point of view? So anyway, I hope that that kind of helps people unravel the very sticky and twisty wires of what is an excuse versus what is an explanation, because it's not
No.
easy. Nothing's ever clear cut, and there's no such thing as black and white in this. Um, but hopefully that can help some people who are kind of out there going, I got told I was giving excuses today, but I don't feel like I was
Mm.
giving an excuse. Maybe this can help people who are
Yeah.
just kind of wondering. So anyway, once again, thank you all for listening here, for being out there on the World
Yes.
Wide Web, supporting us. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you next time with another
Woohoo.
episode of
Basil
Basiltov.
Tov.
Basil
Bye,
Basiltov.
Tov.
ladies.